Welcome, guys. Welcome to Flutter Mumbai. So this is our August meetup. So I know it's pretty 4 p.m. So half of the people might be feeling sleepy, but as someone has said that there is no time to learn, or there is no time to learn something new. So today we are having this Flutter conference, Flutter meetup, August meetup. So what is going to happen in this meetup, and what exactly is Flutter Mumbai? So we'll discuss about it very soon. So first, I would like to show you what is Flutter Mumbai. So welcome to our meetup, Flutter Mumbai. So this is our August meetup. Today, so okay. So what exactly is Flutter Mumbai? So Flutter Mumbai is we are basically a community where we share knowledge about Flutter. We tweet about Flutter. We discuss about different things in Flutter. And every month we try to conduct one or two events about Flutter and its supporting technologies. We call speakers from different parts of the world. So like every time we try to call from different parts of the world. So till last session we try to call speakers from India, but this time, like Tata Mumbai has traveled the whole world and found some three amazing speakers to discuss something new about it, new something new about Flutter. So, some people ask in the comment section, like, what exactly is the topic of Flutter this time? So here the topics are there, like Riverpod, which is a new provider. We all have must have heard about. You all must have heard about blocks, then state management, different types of state management. But this time there is a new provider and the new state management that is Riverpod. Second is the accessibility of Flutter. So what exactly is the accessibility of Flutter? So accessibility of Flutter is like, so it is pretty new concept. So I would like to. So I think Lara and Miguel, they are the speakers, so they'll be able to explain it to you in a more better way. So I'll move towards the presentation. So there are multiple things that you can do with us and you can share with us. So first is the Twitter handle. So you can ask us the questions. So every day we get a lot of questions using the hashtags Flutter Mumbai and mentions at their Mumbai Flutter. Where supposedly if you make a new application, make something new, find something new about Flutter, you want to share it with us, we'll surely be happy to share it with others too, which we get from mentioning. Now, on Telegram, we discuss different way of Flutter topics. So every day we try to discuss some of these new topics. A lot of people have questions like how to do this, how to do that in Flutter, how to find new widgets or some new inspirations. So all the topics are discussed in the Telegram group on meetups. So like we every month we create a meetup, but then the question comes is like how will you know about the different meetups? Like when exactly is the new meetup? Who is the speaker? What is going to be a topic? So all that will be covered in the meetup.com. You can search us on Flutter Mumbai and the YouTube, where you are exactly right now. So where we see all the new sessions. So this like conference is going on YouTube. If you supposedly miss any of our sessions or you were not able to come to our sessions, then you can surely watch us on YouTube. We try to record most of our meetups and post it on YouTube so that you can see it in the future. Or if you might forget a point, then you can contact the speakers too on Instagram. So our Instagram is very different. Like we don't try to share the new tweets or something, but we try to share knowledge that we gain as organizers, co-organizers from communities, and different knowledge that we get from people. And we share it on our Instagram. We have our stories. Supposedly here in the picture you can see like strings, string interpolations. So all the new techniques. And the main part of our Instagram is we try to go on the basics, that is the Dart types, everything new about Dart or something that is basic that all of people know, but people don't use a lot. We try to show it over there on Instagram. So thank you guys. So thank you for Flutter Mumbai. So watching the presentation. Stay home, stay safe. So now you came to know about Flutter Mumbai, but I will. So now we'd like to discuss something with you. I would like to welcome Mr. Vivek Yadav and Mr. Aditya Sutar to join the session.
Hey
Hello,
guys,
Vivek.
yeah, hi. Vivek, your mic is muted.
Yeah, Mike.
Let's discuss some things like something about Flutter. Hello, am I
So Vivek,
audible?
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes. So Vivek, you are a speaker itself. Like you are one of our
Okay.
co-organizers. You are a speaker. You are a mentor. So how is your experience as a community person in Flutter? Would you like to share that?
Well, I like a lot, and one of the things which I will say after coming into this community thing, I actually learned a lot. I can say I have upgraded myself. Not in, I mean, I was a teacher before, but now I know how to teach. to a student or to a person who really don't know about the technology. So all these things come through community, meeting with people. Sometimes I attend meetup which are not really linked to me, but again they give me a lot of knowledge that I can apply uh, in somewhere or someplace in my life that I don't know. Okay, so a lot thing. I mean, it is beneficial to everyone, you, me, everyone, whoever joins. If you start a community or you being in a community, you just attend meetup. That also gives you a knowledge.
Now I like to ask Adi, like, Adi, you're pretty from the designing background. Like, I have worked with you since last 1 year. We both are working together. But
Yeah.
then I have to say, like, you're pretty much from the designing background. You're not much from the development background. And you have tried to, like, you were in college, so you have tried different technologies. And when you came out of college in community, you have a pretty experience, like 1.5 year experience you have for community too. And then you have come for Flutter. So would you like to share something about it?
Yeah, so like the Flutter actually like caught me in like the thing that I can develop like the best apps or like the design I imagine in the Figma or anything. I
Like me
I
in like the thing that I can develop like
hello.
the
There's
best
this
apps or
sound.
like the design I imagine in the Figma or
Hello.
like me in like the thing that I can develop like
Hello.
the best
There's this
apps or
sound.
like the
Hello, dude. Is audio coming again? Hello. Yeah. Yeah, so it's like the thing which I can like using Flutter. I can convert my um, designs into app exactly like how I design the widget or the button. Like I like this gradient or this shape of this button, then I can like exactly I can convert that into the Flutter. So it's like that's caught me. So it was the best experience like I'm having in Flutter right now.
Yeah, perfect. And I heard you are working on website. I mean, Flutter Web. So how was your experience with actually working with the Flutter Web and other technologies in general?
Yeah, so in general, it's like no, it's not. We all know that Flutter Web is in beta, but there are like a lot of things you can do with the Flutter. Like you can make like good animations in, and then use that you can use that in the Flutter Web. So that experience is very smooth and easy to do that. But like as if you compare them along, they are like pretty much developed right now. Like you can say Angular or anything, but the Flutter Web is like quite easy for me to learn because I tried Angular, so it is taking time. Like I'm still learning that, but it is taking like a lot of time. So I think Flutter Web is quite easy to do that, and you can develop like static website easily, very easily.
Well, Flutter, then Flutter Web is really cool and easy. Okay, yes. I also heard about you. You're working on designs a lot. I saw your post on Instagram and Twitter. So I want to know how was your experience with design. Are you creating your own custom widgets or predefined widgets that are available in Flutter are sufficient to work with?
Okay. First of all, like, am I audible properly? Hello? I'm audible, yeah. So like I have recently started about designing. So my inspiration was from Adi itself. Like I tried to design. So initially what I did was I tried to create mockups. Like the design that were pre-installed built and I tried to create different. And recently I saw some posts from Marcin, like you must have seen him in different communities. So like he has made some animations using Flutter UI design. So I thought like let's learn about it because I have made some application, but it was not pretty like a top-notch design. So I thought about doing that, and I learned about different widgets. Like supposedly the basic widgets that we use, the offset and the position. Like all must have heard it. Like I heard it. I think so. Last 6 or 7 months, I've heard about the widget, and I never used it. I was like pretty confused. Like how do I use it? What it is? It's pretty complicated for me. But then I learned through him. I saw like how to do that, and it was pretty good. I was able to do it nicely. So that is where you can do the UI designs, the animations. I will say like if anyone wants to learn the UI designs, it is pretty easy. It's just that skip off your fear and go ahead, which I try to do, and like it's pretty easy, pretty amazing right now. I saw what feedback the people gave me, and they're pretty good. Like a lot of people are supportive, so that is pretty good for me. As for what I did with the designers, I tried to contact some designers, the Flutter designers, and they really helped me a lot. Like I have some contacts who I contacted, and I told them like, so I need to learn designing. How do I start? So they said, okay, you can directly start it, and they gave me some inspiration, some YouTube videos and channels, and they told me like, you just try to copy from it, and once you understand what are the widgets, then it will surely help you. And that's what I tried. So right now I'm doing designing. Thanks, man.
Okay, yeah, perfect. So I think Aditya and I got some other things. So you can start with our session.
Yeah.
Okay. So guys, let's start with the session. So as you know, like we have different topics today. So our first topic, as you all know, it is about the Riverpod, right? It is a new provider and it is a mess. So first of all, I'd like to tell you about who exactly is a mess. Mess, sorry. So this time we called Mess from directly from Saudi, and she has come here to talk about us. She's an application designer and a Flutter developer. She's a community person. She's also a lead at Movement Technicals Saudi. She is also a Flutter instructor at GCDC Saudi, and she has conducted many workshops in different places across the city. She is also a writer. She shares knowledge in the form of blogs through Medium. She has written multiple blogs. One of them was like basically the concept like build context and different blogs. So I would like to invite Mes for a session. So hello Mes, how are you? Hello Mes. Hello.
Yeah. Sorry, the mic was muted. Hey there.
Hey, Mes. So, I checked on time. Like, it is pretty 1:47 at your place. It is basically sleeping time. So, thank you for coming in Flutter Mumbai. So, I would like to know more about your today's talk. Can you share some details about with us?
Yeah. First thing, I'm really glad to be here with you today, all from Flutter Mumbai community. My talk today is about Riverpod. And if you heard or if you haven't heard about it, it's a new package that was made by Remy Roslet, who is the original author of Provider Package,
Yes.
the famous Provider Package.
Yes.
So, can we start now?
Sure. So,
Yeah.
I think our audience is pretty excited to see about the talk. So, let's start the talk.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, I suppose everyone can see my screen now. In today's talk, it's not going to be only talking. I'll be showing a quick demo of how to use Riverpod. It's pretty easy. But before that, I will talk about why Remy decided to make a new package. Wasn't the provider enough? So let's see. First thing is these terms that we hear a lot about around the community, which is state management, widgets, inherited widget, provider. State management is, we could say it's the hottest topic in Flutter and the most topic that we all developers talk about. And it has a lot of things. We have a lot of solutions for it. There's no one particular solution that we can say that this works for every Flutter application perfectly. It's a matter of what is the thing that you want to do, you want to make, what is the application you want to make, and what is the solution that works for you. So there's no one answer for the question, what is the best state management solution in Flutter? But there is some developers who tried to make some solutions that the community could make use of it. We know some of them as a provider. We know Block, we know MobX, Redux. All these has packages in Flutter. But in today's talk, we'll focus on provider, which is the most popular state management, not a full state management solution, but it's a great solution that we can implement in our applications. It scales very nicely to big applications. It can be used with other solutions like Block. We have block provider. So provider was built over inherited widget. So it takes the same logic of the inherited widget and makes it easier for us to use it. Because using inherited widget immediately is tough. We can't really do it. But provider takes this and make it very nicely packaged. So the question is, why to introduce a new solution? Provider is good. A lot of applications is using it. So why Remy decided that? The reason is provider isn't actually perfect. It has some flaws. It has some limitations, I could say, things that we can't really do with it. So the solution was Remy decided to introduce this new package called Riverpod. The Riverpod is actually provider, but it solves most of the issues with the provider, as we will see. So first, let's take a look into some of the issues with provider. The first issue is we can't really use two providers of the same type. And by saying that, provider is the same as inherited widget. And when we try to reach up in the tree to some provider in our widget tree, we'll reach it using the type. So if I want to reach, for example, to this value, which is a string, I'm here making two providers, both of type string. The first provider has a value of provider, and the next one has Riverpod. When I try to read this provider down in some page, okay, in the home page in this case, it will show me the Riverpod. It will not show me provider, and the reason for that is the second provider is comes after it's nested. The providers nest together, and the first one is provider, and then we have Riverpod, the string. So when it reaches when it goes up to the tree to search for that provider of type string, it will get only one. It will not see the other one. No matter how you try, you will not see the other one, which is introducing the string provider. If we switched that, if we made the provider closer than the Riverpod, we will get the word provider. So simply, we can't use two providers of the same type. In your widget tree, you need to have only one provider, the provider you want to use of the type you want to use. You can't have two of the same type. The second issue is we can't dispose from a provider that is not in use anymore. So here in this code, I'm consuming a string, a provider of type string. And this provider, I want to dispose from this state of this provider when I navigate out of this page. So I'm using this provider only in this page. And when I navigate out of it, I want to dispose from the state of this provider. So what happens here in the second page, I'm not reading the provider, but I'm introduced to this exception. And the reason for that, in this widget, in this dispose method, I'm disposing out of the provider, like manually. This can't happen because as long as the provider is in the tree, the value of this, or the state of this provider, is gonna be available for all the widgets, for all descendant widgets. So this is hard. I won't say it's impossible, but it's hard to do. The third issue is runtime exceptions. We are all familiar with this nice red screen. When we try to read a provider somewhere in our widget tree, the application is going to be compiled successfully, even if that provider is not available for some reason, like I haven't included the provider in my provider tree, and I'm trying to read it, so the provider doesn't exist, but I'm trying to read it. The application is going to compile successfully. Okay, it will not introduce me any errors. But when I run the application and I goes to where I'm using that value of the provider, this will happen. it will tell me that it can't find the provider. So we have runtime exceptions, which can be a little bit annoying, especially if your application is started to scale big and you have a lot of a big widget tree and a lot of things nested inside of each other. So the issue number 4 is provider is built over inherited widget. So we can't really extract the provider outside of the Flutter framework itself. By saying that inherited widget provider depends on inherited widget uses the build context to access the state, right? So provider does the same. It uses build context. But build context is not available outside of my widget tree. So this could be a little bit confusing. You can't really separate your provider logic outside of your UI logic. So this could introduce a little bit of issues. So other limitations could be combining providers. Like if we have two asynchronous providers, combining them is a little bit hard. And provider is available to the ancestors only, so we can't make it private. We can't, for example, we want to make it private for a specific class or specific widget. It's hard to do that. And from here, we are introducing Riverpod. Riverpod solves all the issues that we mentioned previously. It's compile time phase, meaning that it will not introduce the runtime errors anymore. As long as your application compiles, then you are guaranteed 100% to read that provider. And the ability to use more than one provider of the same type. And this one is really amazing. We will be seeing it in the demo shortly. Riverpod is not dependent on Flutter. We can use Riverpod with Dart, purely Dart, without using the Flutter, without depending on the Flutter libraries or the Flutter framework. And it could easily be made private, and we'll see how. We could listen to providers without a build context, and that's because Riverpod no longer depends on Flutter itself. So this is amazing. And we can combine and transform widgets, states or providers. So this is all what Riverpod is introducing that doesn't exist in provider. To learn more about Riverpod, there is a full documentation about it written by Remy. It's really amazing. It has everything you need to know about Riverpod, so you can reach out riverpod.dev. And there is a talk, 30 minutes talk from Remy about provider vs Riverpod. So if you, after our talk, if you are curious to learn more about it, I really recommend that you watch this talk. And now we will have some brief demo. I included the final repo. You can access it after our talk. I'll be making this simple counter application. It's not in this counter. We will use two counters. We will have two separate counters. Each one will be of the same type. Like the first counter will be of the type counter, and the second one will also be of the type counter, but they will not interfere with each other, and we will be able to read each state, the state of each one individually. And we will also be doing some kind of computation on the value of these providers. So let's start. Of course, you can get the slides from here after I finish coding. Okay, so here is my simulator, and at the moment it has nothing displayed on the screen. We have our application as a stateful widget, and then we have the home page as a stateless widget. Okay, so to use the Riverpod package, of course, we need to import it, and I'm importing it here. But if we went, let's go to bub.dev and search for Riverpod. We can see that we actually have 3 packages, not only one. We have Riverpod, we have Flutter Riverpod and we have hooks Riverpod. So which one am I going to use? The answer is it depends. So Riverpod was made into separate packages. The first one is Riverpod, and you can see that we can use it with native Dart. It doesn't depend on the Flutter framework itself. The second one is Flutter Riverpod, which can be used with Flutter. So if you are using Flutter, you will use Flutter Riverpod. If you are not using Flutter, you will use Riverpod. And the third one is Hooks Riverpod. There is another package written by Remy, which is Hooks, Flutter Hooks, which implements the hooks logic from React into Flutter. So if you are using Flutter hooks, you can use Riverpod with Flutter hooks using this package. But in this demo, we are only using Flutter, so we will use this package. Okay, and I already got it here. So what we will do is we will learn how to create a provider. We'll learn how to consume and read this provider. And then we will use multiple providers of the same type. Then lastly, we'll combine and transform these providers. So first thing you need to know is, of course, I imported the package. We need to wrap in the part of your widget tree where you want to use Riverpod. You need to import you need to use this widget, which is provider scope. It doesn't have to be around your whole widget, like your main application widget. You could use Riverpod only for a part of your widget tree. So you should wrap that part with provider scope. So I wrapped my whole application with a provider scope, and then we'll start by creating our providers. Now, creating a provider with Riverpod is actually like creating a global variable, okay? And then we will use state provider, which is a new provider introduced in Riverpod that takes an initial value. So it will have the initial value of 0. So sorry, I said that our counter is going to be of type counter, but no, it's going to be of type integer, simple integers. So my state here is, or my provider state is of type integer, and then it's a state provider. I'll create 2 of these. So the first one, then the second one. Nice. So the first mission is done. We created 2 providers of the same type. They are both of type integer. So how are we going to use them? Let's go to our column, and here we'll have a text. We'll have a consumer, okay, and the consumer will take a context and a watch, and will give me a watch method. And this watch method, we can read our provider. So you can notice that it uses the same way of reading providers as the old provider package. So watch, here we will provide it with our provider. So we will watch the provider and read its state. Okay, so this will get me the integer, and then we will return a text that will undefined name. Sorry. Okay, so this way we created the provider, then we are consuming it. So let's hit reload, and we can see the number 0 displaying on the screen. Of course, we need a button so we can increment the state. So we will use a raised button. Then on pressed, just give it a child text increment. So when we press on that button, I want to increment the state of my provider. But to do that, there is a nice syntax, so that when we update the provider, I don't want this button to update. Like, I don't want it to get rebuilt. So if I included the raise button inside a consumer and used the normal like watch, and then I used watch to increment the counter, this will rebuild my button. But I don't want it to rebuild. I don't need to rebuild my button. It will stay the same. Okay. So what I will do here is I will use the provider itself. So counter one provider dot read context. So using the context, I will read the state, and then I'll say plus plus. So this, when I press on the button, it's not gonna rebuild. This syntax is gonna, like, reading the context is not gonna register my raised button as a listener, so it will not be rebuilt. Okay, so let's try now. Increment, it's working perfectly. So now let's create two of this, because we have two counters. Let's use this. Let me just extract this into a separate widget to make this more readable. So we can say counter text. Okay, and this will take the provider, final provider. Perfect. And here I can give it my provider, the one I want to read. So it's counter one provider. And let's create a second one. This will be counter to provider, counter to provider. Let's see if we can read them separately. Actually, when I hot reloaded, you can immediately note that the state of my previous provider is still 3. The second one is 0 because we haven't incremented it yet. So you can notice that I'm actually reading two providers of the same type separately. Each one is referencing a different value or a different state. So this is really amazing. Let's add some height here. I'll make this a little bit bigger. So theme.ofContext.text theme.headline maybe 5. Okay, looks better. So next, we created a provider. Then we consumed that provider. We consumed it, and we even updated it. And then we used multiple providers of the same type. We used both counters are of the type integers, and we could use them successfully. I'll show you a nice thing about provider scope. So let me explain what is provider scope. I will go to my DevTools. So in my widget tree, I hope you can use that. You see this clearly. So in my widget tree, I can notice that I have the provider scope because it's a widget. And if I click on it, I can see that all my providers are here. But why I have 4 of them? I should have only 2. So we have 2 providers. I can see the state of this as an instance of state controller of type integer. So provider scope is actually a widget that stores all my states. All my providers are going to be stored inside provider scope. So I can access them anywhere without wrapping any part of my widget tree where I want to access the provider. I needed to provide the provider by calling provider of type integer. Then I can consume it. But here we are consuming it directly. And the reason for that is all the states are already stored in provider scope. So provider scope works like a repository for all my providers. I just want to know why it has, yeah, when I hot restarted it, it's only 2 instances. And you can know that they both, each one of them has a different number. So they are actually both different instances. We are not using the type anymore to access the providers. We are referencing to it. So now the last step is to combine and transform the providers. There is a new widget in Riverpod called computed. So to use this, I will make a new class, and in this class, I will get the multiplication of these 2 counters. So for that, I will use computed. And computed is a provider that will that can listen to my providers, to other providers available on the provider scope, and can do any kind of computation on them, and then return me the value. So it will have a watch function, and this watch method is gonna watch both my provider. I will use them to watch my providers. So counter 1 equals watch counter 1 provider dot state. Let's copy that. And counter 2 will watch the counter 2 provider state. And then I can do my computation. So I will return counter 1 multiplied by counter 2. And note that computed is really efficient, because when it computes the value, it will not rebuild itself again until one of these providers is changed. Like if the counter 1 state has changed, then it will compute itself again and provide me with the new value. So no unnecessary rebuild. Counter 1. Let's create another one for subtraction. Let's call it sub. This time we will subtract them. Perfect. So let's read the computed. The computed could be read as the normal provider. Nothing special. So let's create here text consumer, and inside the consumer context watch, and here I can say final multiply equals watch counter dot multiply. So I'm watching counter dot multiply. So I'm watching the first computed, and I will watch the second one. So sub, and let's return a column. Children text. This will be multiply value, multiply, and the second one is text. This is sub. Okay. We forgot to say read the state. Sorry. This is not a state. The computer is going to return an integer immediately. So we don't need to read the states here. Multiplication, subtraction. So we have multiplication. Let's try now. So if I incremented that, the subtraction is 1 minus 0, which is 1, but the multiplication is 0. And then if I incremented 6 by 2 is 12, and 6 minus 2 is 4. So you can see how I could compute the value of my two of my providers. Like I read them and then I transformed them, and I got the new value. So this is a really nice. The computer is a really nice provider. I made Now this is the example of counter. I made another example, like more complicated example. I won't be writing it because we don't have much time, but I will show you. QR generator. It uses an API. Okay, it was a try from me. I'm still playing around with Riverpod. I haven't. I couldn't really. Okay, so this is QR generator, and this application actually give me a QR code. I'll give it a URL, and it gives me a QR code. I'll decide if it's an SVG or a PNG, and if it's a transparent or not. So if I said it's a PNG and I give it google.com, it should generate a QR code for me. But let's dive in and see how I made this with Riverpod. First, I made a model class with a change notifier. So this time I'm using the change notifier provider. Actually, Riverpod has all the providers that was in provider. So we had change notifier provider, we had future providers, stream provider, all of them are still in Riverpod and you can use them. So in QR code, it is extending change notifier, and QR code represents the properties of this QR code. So if it's transparent or not, what type is it, the URL, and the final image URL. Then a constructor, then set transparent, like setters, all setters. And each time I'm setting a value, I'm notifying the listeners. So here I'm setting the value to true. Okay, so here you can see I'm setting the value to true, false, so it's changing. How am I reading the QR code? In my page, here I'm watching the QR provider that I made out of QR. So our state here is the QR code model of type QR code, and I'm watching that. Okay, and here I have first the checkbox list style, and right here the value is QR, is my provider, the transparent, the value of transparent. And when I click on it, I'm using the read function of the provider. So QR provider.read.set transparent, and this will notify my listeners. So that's why my UI is rebuilding. And then I have the radio list style, which chooses between PNG and SVG. It also uses my QR provider and reads the QR type and then sets the type. I have two of them, PNG and SVG. And then I have the normal, like the URL, and whenever I write something, it's gonna set the state of my QR code to the URL I have typed here. Of course, I need to make some kind of verification to make sure that the user is writing the correct URL, but I had no time, so there is no validation here. Let's suppose I'm writing only the correct URL. So then I have a centered button, and when I click on that button, I'm calling API.getEndpoint. So if to return back to my API class, in the API class, I have the host, which all like it's the common host between all of the requests. And then I have a function to get the endpoint. And get endpoint, it will take a code. I'll give it a code. As you can see here, I'm giving it my QR, the provider QR state. And then I have a final transparent, just deciding if it's a transparent or not. If it's transparent, I will include this segment in my URL request. If it's not, I will include nothing. And then I'm taking the URL, putting HTTPS to make it a valid URL. And then I am combining all of the host with the transparent, with the code type, with the URL, and then the endpoint. I'm getting that endpoint. I'm sending my request using this URL, And if the status code was 200, I'm setting the image, not here. I'm using my provider to set the image to the endpoint. And when this image is set, like if it's not null, because if it's null, that means I haven't got the QR yet. But if it's null, then, if it's not null, I will show my image. So if we try it again, google.com, I'll generate the QRL and you can try to see if it's working with your phone. Okay. I don't know, there is an exception. Okay. It was working. So I'll give it google.com, then generate QR. Yeah, this will give me the QR code. You can try and see if this QR is working. I'm using a public API, by the way. This example is available on the repository. You can find it here. Okay. And also the counter application is available. You can experiment both of them if you just change the home page here from counter to QR generator. You can, from home to QR generator, you can experiment both of them. So I'm still new to Riverpod and I'm still playing around with it. I tried to make it as clear as possible. Of course, there's much more about Riverpod, how to use future providers. There is a new concept called family. Also, it's available in the documentation. You can read about it. But in general, this is how easy it is to create providers and consume them and even transform them and to make a provider depend on another provider, which wasn't really available in the provider. So I hope this was clear enough. I'll get back to my slides and you can get the slides. And inside the slides here, this is the repo, so you can play around with it. And don't forget to check the documentation as it has all the explanation for the different kinds of providers and how to use them, consume them, and how to use it with Flutter hooks. Okay, so thank you so much. This is, thank you so much. If you got any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mais. Thank you for a wonderful session and telling us a lot about Riverpod.
Yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, I would like to ask you, like, can we use the Riverpod in production, like in the production applications?
Well, I couldn't understand. What did you say?
So can we use the Riverpod, that is in the provider?
In the production, yeah. No. Well, I won't say no, but Remy says that it's not really recommended because Riverpod is not yet stable. It's still in development. It's an experimental rewrite of provider. So you can play around with it, try different use cases if you want to help and make it even more, can help in contributing to it. Try it around, report any use cases that doesn't really work with it. So it's still under development. So it's not really safe to be used in production, I suppose. And it's not going to really replace provider. Provider is still going to be there. A lot of applications is using the provider. It's great. But in the short term, it's not going to replace it, as Remy said.
Okay. My second question would be, like I saw in your presentation, like there are 3 types of providers in the, what do you call it, pub.dev. Like there is a hooks provider, there is a provider which is outside Flutter and inside Flutter. So how about you decide, like, what exactly should he use?
Yeah, so I said that I will go to the documentation. It has something here. You can see this chart. It says, you ask yourself, if you are using Flutter, then ask yourself another question. If you are using Flutter hooks, okay, if you're using Flutter hooks, then use hooks Riverpod. If you are not using Flutter hooks, but you are using provider, then use Flutter Riverpod. As you saw me today in today's demo, I used Flutter with Riverpod, but I'm not using hooks. So I used Flutter Riverpod. But if you are not using Flutter, if you're using Dart, only Dart, you can use only Riverpod. So I said that Riverpod is not dependent on the framework itself. Okay, it's not dependent on Flutter as provider was. Provider, I can't really use provider with Dart only. I need to use build context to access states and etc. So, but Riverpod is not. Riverpod is independent of Flutter, so you can use it with Dart alone. But there is this variation that is for Flutter.
Okay. So like I would like to ask you, like as we have seen, like we have a provider, we have different things for state management. Like you said in the start of a presentation, like you have different things: inherited widgets, blocks, normal providers, from state management. Yeah. So you said, like, can we use this Riverpod in the state management, and how is it better from others?
So as I said, Riverpod is still experiment. I can't really say that, like me myself, I haven't used it yet completely in a big application. I'm still playing around with some examples. So I can't say that it could be used, how efficient it is from other state management solutions like Block and etc. I can't really decide, but you can try it yourself.
Sure.
I'm still playing around with it. Okay. But I found it really interesting that I always wish that provider doesn't depend on Flutter, so I can use it out without using build context. And this is the most amazing thing about Riverpod. Actually, everything you can do with provider, you can do with Riverpod.
Okay. So it is pretty good. So I will surely try this Riverpod and surely try to play around with it again. So thank you, ma'am, for coming to Flutter Mumbai and giving us a wonderful session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you too for having me.
Thank you very much. Okay. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the session. This was a new amazing session about the new Riverpod, that is a new provider. So for the second session, like everybody, like I asked myself a question: what is the difference between a good app and an awesome app? Everyone has a question in mind, like how do I make an awesome app from Flutter? Like Flutter is always saying that you can make this application, you can make that application, but I always try to make some good apps and awesome apps, but it is impossible for me. I always lack some confidence, like, yo, man, this is not an awesome app. So today we have called two speakers, basically from Germany, to tell us about it. So our first speaker is a Google developer expert. She's a speaker, she's a writer, she's a developer. And every 2 weeks, like after every 2 weeks, she also gives a podcast talk on the developer life, tech, games, and other things. And she also makes sketchy notes. So she's none other than Ms. Lara Martin. And our second speaker is Miguel Beltran. So he's a freelance developer and a software developer consultant. He's specialized in native and cross-platform mobile application development. He has experience in Android, iOS, as well as Flutter. So I would like to welcome Lara Martin and Miguel.
Hey, hello.
Hello. How are you?
Hello.
Can you hear us well?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
So hello, Lara. Hello, Miguel.
Hello.
So,
how are you?
Hey.
I'm pretty good. So I would like to know something about your session. Can you please tell me something about your session?
About what, sorry?
Our session.
About the session. Yeah, so we think that it's very important, accessibility in general, and it's something that it's overlooked many times, or in the majority of applications and companies, because I guess
it's not a priority.
It's not a priority. Everyone wants to know how much value you are bringing, how much money that means. And we are advocates of doing the things in a correct way, or
doing the right thing.
Doing the right thing and being nice to people. And this is something important. And we found that by doing small things, just inside your workflow, just having small things, you can accomplish a lot and you can help many people.
Yes, you will see today that just doing little changes on your app, on your actual Flutter app, you are going to help a lot just by doing little changes. And that's what we want to highlight today.
Yeah. And the motivation of this talk was to get an application and see how we could improve it to make it more accessible, because normally in a startup you start with developing an application and overlooking accessibility, right? So we took an application where Miguel was working and which is open source, and we made it more accessible. You know?
We modify it, so you will see it today.
So I think we should directly move ahead to our session. So let's start the session.
Cool.
Cool. Are you sharing our screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, cool. Yes, as I was presented, I'm Lara, and I'm a mobile developer. I would say on a daily basis, I work on Android. And besides that, I enjoy Flutter very much. And yes, we are based in Berlin, both of us.
Yeah. My name is Miguel, and I'm a freelance consultant. I specialized in Flutter, and well, yeah, we live here.
So as we said, we are going to be talking about accessibility on Flutter, how to make your applications easier to use to everyone, to all kind of audiences. And by the way, if you want to download the slides, you want to watch them while we are talking because the streaming video is not good enough or whatever, you can find them in my Twitter account. If I'm not mistaken, they should be posted already. And yeah, if not, someone can post the link on the chat.
Yeah, if you find it, post the link on the chat. That will help the rest. Okay.
Cool. So accessibility. Everyone has a different idea on what accessibility is. The classic definition is the design of products to be used by people with disabilities, and according to different sources, up to or around 15% of the world's population has some type of disability. People with disabilities depend on applications and services that support accessibility to communicate, learn, and work. And by making your application more accessible, you can reach more users. But there's also the concept of universal design, which is products that are designed in a way so they can be used by the widest majority of people. And that is precisely what we are going to be focusing today. There are two ways of helping. One is with assistive technology. This is creating new devices like what you see here on the screen, which is a device that will perform a task. This is you can see here in the screen, a picture of a switchboard, which is a board with 1, 2, 3 switches that a user can press. There's also the Braille keyboards that you might have seen already on real life or in videos, but we won't be covering this today. The second way of helping is with adaptive technology. This means that you adapt existing technology to enable a person to perform a task. And this is what we want to focus today in this talk. Learn to adapt your Flutter applications.
For this talk, we will take an existing Flutter app, and then we will evaluate the current status regarding accessibility, and then we're going to fix it. The app we used is a clean yet complex Flutter application. This is a project that I worked for several months and that at the end we released open source. So it was the perfect example. And as you can see, it's a messaging app, which is also a common case. So on the left, what we have is a drawer with some options, some user settings, and also you can pick the channel there. In the center, what we have is the messaging area where you can read messages and you can also write messages and also add attachments. And on the right, we have a slide in area that contains some details. And there is a link to the project also on the slides, so you can go and check the source code there. We will be evaluating the accessibility of an app in respect to 3 different types of disability. We took the most common, but more exist. Okay, so we have motor disability, vision disability, and neurodiversity. And we will talk about what challenges people with these disabilities have and how we can help them. We will assess our application, collect all the issues we find, and fix them later. To do a fast preliminary test of the app, we're going to use the accessibility scanner. This is an Android application that you can download that will suggest accessibility improvements on your app. It works by scanning the app and detecting possible improvement targets. Some of the things it will detect are small click areas, low contrast areas, missing labels, and so on. So let's run this in our app.
When we run the accessibility scanner in one of the app screens, we chose the chat screen, this is what we got. We are going to be going into detail later on each one of those squares, and we'll see how to fix them. But I want you to show, and I want you to see that in this simple screen, the accessibility scanner already showed us that we have a lot of work to do. And we also used some accessibility options from iOS and Android, and we will be talking about them in the talk, but we want you to be aware that if we are using simulators or emulators, the amount of options is going to be way smaller. So we always recommend you to use a real device whenever possible.
Let's start with movement disabilities, which take the large majority of affected users. A motor disability when using software means that a user can have limitations interacting physically with the app. And depending on the level of disability, they may face different challenges. For example, they may require larger click areas, or they may require a special hardware because they are not being able to tap on the screen. And in the most severe cases, the user may need to use voice-activated software only. So how can we help? If you are developing games, you can enable a way to set the difficulty and also to provide a mode to pause the game. You need to be sure that keyboard or switch navigation works. So provide the user with the option to using the application with a keyboard or a switch, and we will explain that later. You can also enable voice with navigation, or you could have also as well adaptive UI components. That means that they will become larger if the user enables the option in their accessibility settings on their phone. And as well, you can enable things like auto-completion that can help with text input. One of the issues that the accessibility scanner found was the small click areas. The accessibility scanner is highlighting here this widget that has an issue. In this case, is the username, which is a clickable area that opens the user profile. The problem here is that the clickable area is too small. This is reported as a touch target issue, as you can see, and at the bottom of the screenshot. And this is one of the things that we're going to fix later. We try to use keyboard navigation here to navigate through the items using tabs. And I'm going to play a video, and hopefully you can see it on the screen. Yes, you can. So as you can see, we are trying to navigate through the app using the keyboard. And we haven't done anything on the app yet. We're trying to use tabs to select the item. We're trying to navigate into the settings. And, well, it's pretty much impossible because you don't know what you have selected or anything. There must be a better way to navigate the app using some device. So we tried also what is called a switch access to use the app. Switch access, or is also called switch control on iOS, scans the app and highlights columns and rows as items, allowing you to select things by tapping on the switch. So let's see how we can use that with the app. And another video. And here we are using the switch to open the profile. So you can see that a square appears on the screen, indicating where you are selecting. And then you can navigate through it until you can select the settings. And then you get inside, you go into the user profile, as we said. Now we want to navigate back. And now we want to navigate into the message screen, to the channel to create some messages. And with the switch access, we can actually navigate through all the clickable areas and do this task. So to summarize, the issues we found when checking accessibility of motor disability is the small touch targets, as was reported by the accessibility scanner, and also that the keyboard navigation was not so good, but with switch navigation already worked well by default with Flutter.
The second disability type we are going to be evaluating today is vision issues in general. According to the World Health Organization, there are 4 levels of visual impairment: blindness, severe visual impairment, moderate visual impairment, and mild impairment. Also, keep in mind that being legally blind does not mean that you are fully blind. There are different levels of vision. It's estimated that at least 2.2 billion of people have a vision impairment or blindness. How can we support them? How can we help? We must support large font sizes. We have to support screen readers and have high contrast content. Vision disability affects most people, but also there are many users who are not technically disabled but can use these improvements as well. For example, I myself use a larger font settings on my phone because I find that modern devices nowadays have very small fonts by default. And so by supporting large font sizes in your applications, you're also helping me as well. We also will be talking about the color blindness, but a bit later. First, I want to show you different things. One of the settings that we can find on both Android and iOS is the font scaling option. This allows us to make the text larger, and the good news is that the text widget supports it by default. However, notice that Rich Text widget does not. If we check our application at the largest Android setting, we can see how it changes, although not a lot. Still, it's something. Although we found that different Android devices have different scaling, so it might be differences between manufacturers.
Like a Samsung device is different than a Pixel phone?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
And on iOS, the change was way bigger. And you can see here that the text became massive. We recommend you, in general, we recommend you to test the largest font setting on an iOS simulator, as it seems like it's going to be the largest possible one. On Android, there's another option called display size, which makes items on the screen larger. For example, icons, containers, or UI elements in general. Unfortunately, it seems not to be supported on Flutter. Maybe you can see a little bit that the clock and the status bar icons are a bit bigger, but the app itself remains the same. iOS has also an option called text bold, which is to make the text bold in order to increase the contrast for visually impaired users. And as you can see here, it seems to be well supported by Flutter when we enable this setting. Magnify is an option available both on Android and iOS that allows users to zoom into your application using a double tap. But keep in mind that if you are implementing some gestures in your application, if you are asking your users to tap multiple times for some actions, it will also conflict with the native zoom options. This option we found that is only available on physical devices running iOS. Right?
And that's why we have a picture here instead of a screenshot.
Yeah, exactly. And we also discovered a set of different unsupported options on iOS. The option called button shapes that underlines buttons to make clear to the user what is clickable or whatnot. An option that displays labels on all actionable items like switch boxes that will display a 1 or 0 depending if they are enabled or not. And one action that reduces transparency and another that increases contrast. But we will see later that we can still use some options.
So let's talk about color blindness. This is a type of vision disability where there's a decreased ability to see color or to differentiate between colors. It appears it affects 8% of the male population and only 0.5% of women. It doesn't mean that you are only able to see black and white, but also means that you may not be able to differentiate colors also. So how can we help them? Don't only use color, but instead add icons to explain messages. Do not rely only on color. For example, if you have an error message, do not highlight it in red, the field to say that it's wrong, but also add some icon, add some explanation to it. And also as well, you can add options to change the colors of your app. On Android, we can check how colors are going to look by using the Simulate Color Space option in the developer settings. You can set it to monochrome and the other 3 different colorblind options. And you can switch between them and see if your app is still usable when them are enabled. And here you can see the screenshot of the app with the monochrome, and we see that you can still differentiate all the icons and everything. With the accessibility scanner, we detected missing item labels. For example, this menu item here doesn't have a semantic label, which is what the screen readers will read out loud. Another issue found is the message input field. The text contrast in the message input field is too low, meaning that the users could have difficulties to see it. So we could improve the text contrast also in our designs. People with severe vision disabilities use what is called Android TalkBack, which is also called Android VoiceOver on iOS, which is a software that reads out loud what's on the screen. When using it in the app, we notice that when you tap on the screen, it reads the scaffold title. That's good, but maybe we can improve it a little bit. Then when you tap on menu buttons, they are not labeled, so it doesn't know what it is. And when we tap on a chat item, it reads the time and it reads the message, but it doesn't read the username, and we can make this nicer also as well. There's also the possibility to use Android TalkBack with gestures. And it's the same as before, but we navigate between items using a swipe action, which is similar to the switch navigation. The TalkBack reads the item, and then we can activate it by doing a double tap on the screen. And we can expect that most of the TalkBack users are going to be using it this way. We also evaluated the app using an iPad and the VoiceOver plus gestures to navigate it. The results are similar on Android, although we get a couple of different things. First, the buttons are not registered as such, but instead as images. And also iOS tries to give us a clue of what it could be. So for example, for the user icons, it's telling that it thinks that it's a puzzle, because VoiceOver can describe images using some simple image recognition software. And the same is guessing that the menu button we have is a menu, but it's telling something like possibly a menu. So we have found different issues here. When using TalkBack, there are missing labels everywhere. Also, text description like the author of the message is missing. The text input for the message also has low contrast. We also found that the display size for Android is not supported, and there's also a bunch of iOS features for accessibility that we found that they were not supported. And we will see later what we can do here.
The third type of disability we will look at is neurodiversity, which refers to the diversity of the human brain. Neurodiversity covers different disadvantages that users can face. For example, focusing problems, learning difficulties, disorders like autism, dyslexia, ADHD, some disorders that you might have heard before. How can we help? We can use minimalism in design. We have to focus on the tasks that the user has at hand and eliminate any distractions. Narration is also something that helps users to keep focus and follow with your content. For example, if you have a learning application, including both audio and text to read along, will help users absorb your content. Spell checking plays an important role also, as it will help users with writing difficulties. Remembering settings and passwords is also very important for those who have memory issues, and being able to paste passwords is crucial, so be sure that pasting works. Also, guide the user through the app, but without overwhelming. You can show hints here and there, but not too many at the same time. When using text fields, we can help neurodiverse users by facilitating typing. In Flutter, autocorrection is enabled by default, but sentence capitalization is not. This means that when a user starts writing, the first character of the sentence will be lowercase, and also every time they start writing a new sentence. And we can help them write better by enabling text capitalization option by sentences, and we will do this later. I work at Blinkist, and this is a screenshot of our application. Here you can read the key points of a book, and as well, you can play at the same time the narration. The goal of this application is to have an audio, and the thing is that users can read and listen at the same time, and that helps focusing for many. It helps a lot to distracted minds like mine. While I'm listening something, if I'm reading the text that goes along with the audio, I keep focus. So the only user issue we found in our chat application in neurodiversity is the sentence capitalization, which is going to be a tiny fix, but very important one. Yeah, so now we can start with the fun part, which is fixing the issues. So after evaluating our application, we came up with a list of issues that we need to fix. We need to fix touch targets. We need to fix the sentence capitalization, the low text contrast. We need also to check the dynamic font scaling and fix all the missing label semantics. So the first one we are going to fix is the touch targets. The issue here was and is that the touch target is too small. And this happens because we have an inkwell, which is the clickable area, and is constrained to the child region, which is just the username text widget. This does not satisfy the minimum interactive dimension. In Flutter, we have a constant value called mean interactive dimension, which defines the minimum dimension that any interactive region should have according to the material design guidelines. This is 48 pixels on Android and 44 on iOS, which is defined in the Cupertino module. But if you're using material widgets, the material widgets will be using the 48 pixels value as a minimum, independently on the platform you are running your application on. To fix this, what we did is to wrap our text with a constraint box to set a minimum size. We use the value constant mean interactive dimension to set that size, which will force the widget to have at least a minimum dimension of 48. And this is what material widgets will do, or are doing, actually. For example, the icon button. But the problem now is that, yeah, the text has a bigger height and the UI needs to be fixed. So how can we do that? We can use the align widget. We can remove existing paddings and add paddings to the avatar as well. So we can readjust the UI to look like before, but now the username will have a target hit size of 48 or more.
Now we're going to fix the text field capitalization and autocorrection options. By enabling text capitalization in text fields, we can help users write better messages. This is disabled by default because by default is text capitalization none. Setting it to sentences will help users write better sentences, so it's a super quick win. But always think about the use case, since not all text fields require capitalization, like, for example, usernames.
Or passwords.
Or passwords, yeah. Two more improvements available are autocorrection and suggestions. These two properties are enabled by default, but think twice before disabling them. On iOS, autocorrection is the only one that is used, while on Android it requires both autocorrections for spell checking and also enable suggestions to suggest new words for the user. The two different parameters here. Let's check also how to fix the low contrast in the app. In the app, the field for writing a message is a text field with an input decoration that is custom. That was this is a style provided by our designers. Because we control the color of the hint text, we can decide to change it by another darker shade of black. To do that, we can use high contrast. High contrast is a property of media query that you will find in the Flutter framework. It's a Boolean that returns if the user has the accessibility option high contrast enabled or not. We can use this Boolean to apply higher contrast theme to our application, for example. It is important to highlight that this setting only exists on iOS at the moment and not on Android. So the idea is that where we define our theme, we can switch between a pure black color or a custom color for disabled text, depending on the high contrast value of media query. And changing this on these settings will automatically change this in our app. So now when the user changes it, the message will appear with high contrast or with the normal contrast that we saw before. And you can probably see the difference here on the screen.
Now let's fix the text scaling. Rich text is good for text spans, for example, highlight, links to URLs, usernames, etc. However, rich text will not scale based on the text scaling factor that the user selects in their settings. The simple text widget does read the text scale factor, but the rich text does not. So you need to pass this text scale factor from the media query yourself, like we are doing here in this snippet. And finally, we have to add labels, all these missing labels to our widgets. As we saw before, many items in our screen didn't have labels. And to fix this, we need to add proper descriptions to the UI elements we have on the screen. To do this, we use the semantics widget. This widget explains what a piece of UI means, explains whether the element is enabled or not, and it explains if it's an input or just read-only. To help you debug your widgets, Flutter gives you the semantics debugger widget, which visualizes the semantics for the child. We can use this widget to wrap widgets, which in this example we have here on the screen, we are wrapping the whole scaffold. So the semantics debugger widget will draw each one of the semantics region with one color. It will write the text that is going to be read by the screen readers, and this will help you debug and fix the application. First, let's fix the menu button. So we wrap our button widget with a semantics widget, which annotates the widget tree with a description of the meaning of the widgets. We add as a label the text menu, and also we set the button parameter to true. So we make sure that the screen readers will see this as a button and not something else. And now the screen reader will identify and read this as a menu button. The send button is also, well, the send button is disabled by default and also needs to have semantics. And this is a very important thing to tell the user, that the button is disabled or enabled. So again, to fix this, we wrap the send button with the semantics widget. We add the label, we set the button to true, but also we use another property from the semantics widget that is called enabled. That will be reading a Boolean that we will pass, and this is to inform the user whether the button is enabled or not. In the slides, the first image is disabled and the second image is enabled. Talkback says send button disabled or send button when it's enabled. When you use Talkback and you tap on the center of the screen, it will read the screen title, which is, in this case, dogs are the best. But this is not enough information for the user to know what's happening on the screen. They need to have more context. So to fix this, we wrap the scaffold with the semantics widget and we add another label. Now when we tap on the screen, the reader will say, chat screen, dogs are the best. And they have now more context. They understand what they have.
Yeah, it's adding more context to the app bar title.
Yes, exactly. It's giving more information about what they have in front of them.
Yeah.
We also need to fix the messages. As Miguel said before, there was no information about the author of the messages and such. We can do complex labels combining different values from the author, the message object, date, time, etc. For example, we can create a string that contains the name, body, and the timestamp. So Talkback, as we see here on the slide, with this label, Talkback will read, message from Coco, good morning everyone, smiley face at 1844. But it will also continue reading after and say, 1844, good morning everyone, and blah, blah, blah. The thing is that we still have the previous text widget included. How can we ignore the text that is inside in the tree? So the screen reader will only read the label that we passed. We can use the exclude semantics widget to remove widgets. In our messages, we can use the exclude semantics to remove the text widget from the semantics, leaving only the top level semantics label that we added. And now Talkback, the screen readers will only read the label that we added and we created. Semantics is a very powerful tool. We can use it to improve the accessibility of our application, but also we can use it for testing. When we do widget tests, we need a way to find widgets that are displayed. And with the semantics, we can use the label to find a widget. You can do that by using by semantics label to find widget when testing. This is easier to use than even with other testing methods, I would say. By having semantics label, you help others, and at the same time, you can keep your semantics code tested.
Okay, so we are done with the coding. If we check again our to-do list, we have now completed most of the tasks that we have proposed. We fixed the touch targets that were too small. Also, we had to change the layout a little bit to accommodate for larger widgets. We enabled text capitalization, which was a quick win. We fixed the low text contrast issue on iOS. We checked the dynamic font scaling and saw that the rich text widget was not supporting it by default, so we added a text scaling factor value to it. On semantics, we fixed both the missing labels on buttons and as well we improved the way text descriptions are provided within the app. And we also added some tests to verify it. If we run the accessibility scanner again, we will see that we could get rid of all the warnings except the one about hint text contrast, since it is not supported on Android, but we fix it on iOS. So if you want to improve the accessibility of your app, you can run the following steps. First, run the Accessibility Scanner app on Android. That's the quickest way to get a review of your application with lots of actionable items. Then check the larger scale font size on iOS, because it is the one that has a higher setting on how to quickly see any mistake you may have made. Semantics is a great way to make testing easier. So even if you don't want to focus on accessibility on the app, use them to match widgets on your test. Finally, don't forget to embrace the text field built-in improvements and try to make the life of users as easy as possible, no matter if they have a disability or not.
We hope that you have seen with this talk that by just doing small changes in your applications, you can help many people out there. But also remember that being inclusive is the right thing to do.
I hope you have learned today lots of things about accessibility and how to get the best of it using Flutter. This is us, and this is our dog, Lily, and thanks a lot for listening.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you for such a great session, and it was really interesting topic and as well as useful too. Because nowadays people actually don't care about much more about accessibility, and they just keep writing codes. So this was really useful for us. And we have one question for you. So I'll put
Okay.
that on the screen if you can see this.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you can, because what you're providing to the semantics widget is a string, you can then provide the string using whatever internationalization tool that you are using.
Mhm.
So for example, you can provide a call to your app localizations. And so the thing is, what is complicated is to convince your managers that they have to translate also semantics, because they will like to translate the text, but they will not like to translate semantics.
Yeah.
So you need to ask them to do that also as well. And I think that can be complicated. But if you convince them, then you can use the same tools that you use for internationalization together with semantics.
Yeah, that's very true. That it's very difficult to convince people to translate the semantics. Yeah.
It's already difficult to convince them to add semantics to also translate them. So
yeah, depending on the people you're working with, I found, and depending also the number of languages that you're supporting.
Yes,
it's easier. I found that in my current company, where we only have 2 languages for now, it's easier because everything is in house and whatever we need, they do it. But in previous companies where they had, and one had 14 languages and the other 20.
Yeah.
And everything had to go through a consultancy agency thing with translators that cost money. So they didn't like to have to add the semantics or anything. So yeah, it was very difficult to do anything on accessibility there. But of course, I hope that it's you have seen that there are many things that you can do by yourself and already will help people.
Yeah. I don't know. So there is a new question. Yes, I was reading it on the site, and I was thinking, because I don't know this setting, this reduce motion setting. I don't know if it's a new setting from iOS. So I would like to know from the viewer, from Robert, if he can say if it's from iOS or from Android, because I don't know it.
I know there's. I'm not sure if it's iOS or Android. I always mix them, but you can disable animations or make them reduce.
Yeah.
Although I'm not sure how it behaves with Flutter. I use them sometimes with Android for UI testing.
Yes. Yeah. The animation speed, you can change the animation speed on the developer settings on but I will say it's not an accessibility improvement. It's more like
no, but there are options for reducing
and accessibility settings.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know.
But I'm not sure which one is on developers options, but I think there's one at least for users.
Yeah, actually, we don't know if it's supported by Flutter or not.
Yeah,
we haven't tested that part.
Yeah, we didn't have any animations.
Okay, this is the third question by Robert.
It's the same one?
No, yes, it's the same question.
Okay, is that same? Okay, no problem.
I think so.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes,
So
and I agree with what he says. No, it helps with neurodiverse population, of course, because too many animations can be bad.
Animation can
Yeah.
on our applications.
Yeah. Actually, last week I was running some UI tests and I disabled animations, and then I left it disabled, and then I'll continue working, and then I realized how different the application looks like, and how I always forget to disable them to check that the application
still works
well, like
good point.
the flow makes sense and things like that. Although in my application we don't have many animations, to be honest. It's something new they are trying now.
Nice.
So
okay, nice. So I think it's time to start our panel discussion. That is kind of Q&A. So we will ask you some questions and we can discuss on that. For that, I'll add Yash, Preet. If Math is ready, then I'll add her too. And one by one, we can pick a question and we can discuss on that. So for the first question, I'm asking Preet to come on the screen and deliver his first question.
Hey guys,
Preet,
okay, this is still in context to the talk right now. So my question basically is: have you tested accessibility on Flutter Web basically? Because since it's not HTML elements anymore, and there's no ARIA tags anymore, you lose all of the work that's been basically done by since the last 10 years. So have you tested it before? Like, do you know what's the status there?
We did not test it. But what we know is that the latest versions of Flutter Web now include what is, I don't know what is the exact name, I'm sorry, but it kind of includes the skeleton of what it will be a real HTML website on top of it. So screen readers can read now Flutter Web apps.
If I'm not mistaken, they're actually going to change that again. So like with the Wasm Canvas kit that they're going to introduce, they're going to change that whole thing again. The skeleton that you mentioned, they have that in right now. And I believe, I'm not sure, I believe that they're going to change it to just being one canvas and not a skeleton in general.
Okay, so I feel the thing that I was following, at least the last news, were like that.
Yeah, I remember that when we talked about Flutter for Web back in October, there was nothing. But then in January, when we were in Flutter Europe, we were talking about this and how many changes there were already on web and things that were working. But everything is changing so fast.
Yeah, it's very difficult
to follow. Yeah. But as far as I know, it was working. There were things working now, or at least from the latest changes. Yeah. But I haven't tested. Me neither.
All right, that makes a ton of sense. And let me wait. I have a ton more questions, but let Vivek come in. I think he's texting me on my phone. Yeah. So yeah, he's here.
Okay, so you go with second question, Preet. I'll follow you.
Okay. All right. So this might be controversial. So like, if you don't want to answer it, just say I don't want to answer it. But the last few weeks, Remy just started a new GitHub issue talking about verbosity in the whole language, where he wanted to introduce hooks into the entire ecosystem. Like he wanted to bring in hooks into Flutter, and then there was this whole, whole downstream of. He created this issue, and there was a ton of chatter. Dan Abramov came in, have you read that, and second, do you have any opinions on that? Again, you don't need to have opinions because it's a very complicated topic, and I know like a ton of good people are working on it, but I personally would love more like hooks to be in Flutter, because been trying it since the last few weeks, and it's pretty nice. It abstracts away a lot of complexity. And it's not as complex as generating controllers or setting up inherited widgets to do something similar. So yeah, that's the question.
I think that Mais is probably the best one to answer.
Yeah.
I've been following with that discussion, the issue. It's amazing just to see how many developers are putting their opinions in it. For me, the way that Remy thinks of state management, I like it, and that's why I went with Riverpod. I really liked the logic of it and the way of simplicity in it. So for me, I'm not really that expert yet with state management. I'm still trying different things, but I would like if the code I write is much less. If I can write less code to manage my state, that would be great. So I'm a simple developer. I want to write less code. So I don't know what the Flutter team thinks of this. Maybe it's not the time for this, like to introduce some built-in state management, to introduce hooks into Flutter officially. Maybe it's not the perfect time for it. So there are many important things that more than making changes to the ecosystem regarding state management. But Flutter hooks is still there, and we can use it. So yeah. This is what I think.
I personally haven't been following the issue, so I don't have a clear answer for that. Although I have to say that I agree with you. I agree with you when you said that there are more important things to fix first on the ecosystem.
I haven't tried hooks yet, so I cannot say anything about this.
All right, so I have one more. Oh, sorry.
We have one question from in our comment, so I'll just show it on a screen. So it's like, is Riverpod is suitable for all use cases? I think Mass, this is question for you.
Yeah. Is Riverpod suitable? Any use case that provider worked with before, like provider works with a lot of use cases. So Riverpod works with every use case that provider worked with before. So I think for most use cases, yes. But we don't know yet. We have to try it first.
And Preet, we have a comment from Robert about hooks.
Also, okay. So again, I've not gone through the entire issue, but Remy's whole thing was he wanted more openness in the way tooling works. So like he already has hooks working very nicely, but his argument was he needed more openness in the way tooling worked with, and it only works with text state properly right now, and he wanted more openness for it to be extensible to hooks. So yeah, I actually agree with you. Yeah, the whole point that's been mentioned is we don't want to introduce a bias in the ecosystem, right? So we want to have a plain field for anybody. Like somebody wants to create something better tomorrow, or should be able to use it. Kind of agree with that. I mean, everybody agrees with that. The more diversity, the better, right?
Cool. If anyone can find the link to that issue and that conversation, share it in the chat so I can also check it later, please. Doesn't have to be now.
Yeah, I'll share that later. I have one more question for you, Lara. So you mentioned there are more important problems to be solved in the ecosystem of Flutter. Could you, share some of the problems that you face? And it could be community, it could be information, it could be APIs, like something that just seems wrong and should be improved from your perspective.
No, I would say that I rather have the ecosystem stable in all platforms and working well before starting with architecture and such. Perhaps because I have in mind that I work also with Android development in Android, and Google never said which kind of architecture they recommend you to have or to follow until 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's been, yeah, they've been having this platform for many years without giving you the hints, but making the platform work well and focus on what I'd say it's the core and what's important, and then they can focus more on architecture and giving you more suggestions.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I will say that are important for me, and one is the new navigation API. I know that there's going to come a new navigation API that I think it will simplify a lot of the problems that people have when, I don't know, the user is not logged in and you want to redirect the user to another screen and stuff like that. At the moment, it's very tricky, and I think that the new navigation API will improve a lot the code in that way. And the other thing is it has to do with a talk that you are preparing, which is the thing about embedding native views into Flutter. And that means that will improve a lot. Maps will improve a lot. Ads also will improve a lot. Web view.
Yeah.
And I know that there are some changes in that. You know better than me.
Yeah. So we saw that in the latest release, in Flutter 1.20, they included a new system for the word rendering platform views.
Yeah.
And this is supposed to fix many of the issues that platform views have. Like maybe if you have been following the web view plugin, for example, if you want to use web views, it had many issues, very simple things that did not work, and it's supposed to be working now, but I cannot say. I tried I'm not sure if they matched the PR already, but I checked it out and tried to run my demo application with that, but there were a couple of issues I could not solve. So I'm waiting to see if those issues are being resolved in the PR and check how it works. But it's supposed to be another way of rendering platform views.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully now things are gonna start working better, like platform views in general.
Okay, Miles, same question to you.
Can you repeat it again?
Oh yeah, I'll show you a bit. So, in terms of the ecosystem, like, what are you looking forward to? What do you, in terms of your workflow, the way you write code, is there something that you'd say you want changed or improved or built upon in some way? It could be the community, it could be the API, it could be
no,
really
the community is the best part about it. I'd never want to change it. But inside my applications, well, I still have some issues with the architecture. So there is no clear suggestions from the Flutter team about the architecture of our applications. It could be really any kind of architecture. This could create some confusion for beginners. Like when I started with Flutter, that was a really big confusion for me. Everything works. If the architecture is bad, it works. If the architecture is good, I don't know how to, like, it works in both cases. So it's hard for me to decide. So if there is some kind of guidelines or some kind of architecture, maybe not only one, maybe a lot of suggestions, but some kind of clear guides about this will be really helpful. Mm-hmm.
All right. Vivek, do we have time for a couple of more questions?
Yeah, we can.
All right. So I have this one. See, this is again from a tweet from Remy Rooslet the other day. It's been burning in my head. I just want to ask it to more people. So what Remy is basically saying is, again, I might be wrong, so don't quote me on this. So what he basically is saying is, rather than using streams everywhere, so like from when I've been trying Flutter, my whole thing is I want to move everything to a stream. Why? Because I've had some bad experiences with doing fetch state everywhere, and the tabs go funky, and the problems come in the application. So like my whole rationale is I want to move everything to streams. But like a couple of days ago, Remy Roosevelt has basically been saying, rather than moving everything to streams, we should use value notifiers and change notifiers, because using streams in Flutter is like using a chainsaw to cut butter. So like that was his whole rationale there. It's completely fine, but given your experiences, do you have any thoughts, any nuggets that I might have missed? Because I faced some bad problems with just managing state in the normal way, the way it's recommended, like set state.
Yeah. I think that it has to do a lot with the Android community using RX Java, I think. So when you come to Android and you have been doing a lot of RX Java, you are used to these streams, and you are used to have, I don't know, a view model which is exposing some data using a stream, and then you subscribe to this stream, and you wanna copy the thing that you know into Flutter. And I think the point is, and I agree with Remy here, is that you need to think differently, and you need to think what's the platform providing to you, and use the tools from the platform rather than trying to copy a solution that you learned in a different platform. No, and I think that streams are great and they have a lot of uses, but maybe, for example, for this case, for updating the UI, no, and with new values, is maybe not the best solution for the problem, and maybe the change notifier is easier solution for the problem than streams.
Yeah, I would say that it's better to keep things simple always, and only use something more advanced when you have a more complex issue to solve. So yeah, I will agree on that. I also think that most of people were using streams or blog at the beginning because of what they knew from other platforms like Android, but it doesn't mean that it's the best.
Well, it's not like that. Is I think the block is also perfectly valid. We're not saying that it's bad.
No.
Just saying that it's a different solution.
Yeah. For example, I will not recommend a beginner to start with block. I remember when the first videos I was watching on Flutter from the Flutter boring show, they were using block and streams. It was a very new thing for me. I was starting learning RX in my work, and it was too much. For simple things, it was too much. But yeah, depends on what you have in front of you. Depends.
Yeah, I would say that I started with Flutter like I wasn't a developer, and I started with Flutter immediately. So I had no prior knowledge to Flutter. And from the courses, I saw that they use block a lot. And I was making a simple application, and I used block. Although the application is very simple, I used block because that's what I learned. And after I learned about provider, the amount of code that I like when I moved from block to provider, that was much simpler, and it perfectly fitted my use case. So there was no need for using streams in the first place. And I agree with Remy like 100%.
Totally.
All right, so I guess from my end, that's all the questions. That if I have something, I'll ping you on Twitter, I guess. Okay, Remy's here. Okay, that's great.
He is here.
Yep.
You summon him.
Okay. So I'll ask the next question, and this is my personal question, kind of thing. So, what are your views on Flutter's development for desktop applications?
For desktop,
I think it's great, to be honest, and I love it. And the fact that Linux is supporting it now, and Canonical is supporting it now, and and now they encourage people to create Flutter apps and to put them into the Snap on Linux. I think it's awesome. So 100% for it.
Yeah. I think this brings the bar lower.
Yeah.
So the entrance, how do you say, the entrance level to start writing applications for desktop. If it wasn't for Flutter, I will not know where to start writing up an application for desktop. And right now, with Flutter, I can already do whatever I want, right?
The UI
You
kits
have
for
already-
desktop are terrible. Like, except if you are doing like .NET or the Microsoft ones, but then they only work on Microsoft. Like so. I think it's awesome. It's exactly what you say. No, it makes it easier for everyone.
Yes. I
Okay.
expect to see lots of applications for desktop and also work on desktop and not depend on the MacBook.
Yeah, on all platforms.
We have
Yes.
some applications live in App Store.
Can you repeat, please?
We have some applications that are made in Flutter and they're live in App Store for desktops and they work pretty well. I mean, the animations are very smooth, navigations are very smooth.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
I'll put that same question to Matt.
Yeah. So I agree with what Lara and Miguel said, and I'd add adding Flutter for desktop would make the choices for making applications for desktop more diverse. Like we already have a lot of choices on mobile, we already have a lot of choices on web, but on desktop we really don't have a lot of choices. So even if Flutter is not gonna be perfect on desktop, but the fact that it exists for desktop, this creates more options for developers, and it's a great solution.
Yeah, and it helps us to actually cover more audience and to create enterprise level applications that are used in most of the companies.
Yeah.
Okay, I have next question, and it would be pretty native level, I say. So it's like platform channels. What do you think Flutter's future with platform channel? Do you think there will be a time when we can write core features in Dart rather than using Java, Kotlin, or Swift or Objective C?
Yeah, I think that this will come, and I think what example is the Firebase libraries. How the Firebase libraries are going from using the native libraries written for Android and for iOS through platform channels to actually re-implementing it into Dart. And I hope and I think that we will see Google doing that for more libraries and slowly seeing whatever you are using now that calls into a native library, seeing how now there will be a native Dart library. There will be a Dart library directly.
Yeah, it's kind of my hope that in the future, the new people starting with Flutter, they will only have to deal with Dart and Flutter and not with what's behind it, right? Because one cannot know everything. So when I have an issue with iOS, I'm lost, right? I have enough experience and Google's search skills to find ways to debug it. But yeah, I'm not an iOS developer or I don't have experience. And yeah, for any of the platforms, I also don't have experience. So I do hope that in the future we don't have to run into this and we can do everything with Dart and Flutter. Yeah.
Okay, same question to Matt.
Yeah, I have the same hopes. I actually hope that I can literally do everything with Dart, even if I want to write a Firebase function. And even that, I hope they implement Dart instead of Node.js and JavaScript. That will be great. That will be literally everything in Dart.
I agree with that. Yes.
Yeah.
Having to work in a project and having to do JavaScript was very difficult for me.
Okay, so for next question, I'm asking Yash to come on the screen and ask his questions to both of you. Yes, it's your time.
So my first question will be for Lara. So like we were trying this, like we have made the Flutter web applications. So what we tried was to combine the HTML code in Flutter web, but it was pretty difficult for us. So if you guys would like to say something on that or suggest something, like how to combine HTML code in Flutter web.
I don't get the question. So how you will be writing your Flutter application, but you want to incorporate some HTML?
Yeah. So what we are basically trying to do is like we are trying to embedding the Twitter and the other platforms on our Flutter websites, and that's what we're trying on the different websites. So where they are providing us just the HTML code, the HTML, the anchor tags, and the scripts. And what we are trying to do is combining it with the Flutter web. So we were unable to do that. So if you could guys could suggest something.
So to be honest, I'm not very skilled in web to say something. I'm not a web developer. I didn't work so much with web or Flutter for web, so I cannot help you on that. But I'm happy to bring this to more people, and maybe someone else can help you out.
Sure, thank you. So yeah, the same question to Miss and
Same answer. I haven't played around in Flutter for web a lot. Yeah. So sorry.
So what you can try
it will
out,
be sorry, it
yes,
will be great to have this answer on the official documentation, because I think it's very common to say, I have an existing website, I want to add this component in Flutter, how do I do that?
Yeah.
So, or the other way around, no? Like how can I integrate some HTML, JavaScript stuff into a Flutter web application? So it's definitely something that needs to be on the official documentation.
That's very true.
You can open an issue for that, say, hey, documentation is missing. So at least they have a tracking for that. No joking, really do that.
That's true.
Okay, I have one sort of workaround around this. So what you can do, you can create some containers with web view, and you can pass your HTML to those web views, and this will be very expensive. Very
Okay.
expensive. So just, if you want to try it.
So it would be like a web view to run the HTML inside your Flutter web application.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe there's a better way, or some other way to do that. And if not, they should explain how to do this in a less expensive way.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, next question.
So wait, why did you ask the question?
What?
Why don't you ask this next question?
Okay. So next question. I think everything is combined. Okay, one of the question. What is the preferred way to make reusable widget or widget tree using function or classes?
Classes.
Yeah, widget. So yeah,
It's classes. Yeah.
Yeah.
The good thing about splitting your UI using like reusable components using widgets or classes is the fact that you will get a new context, and we all know the problems with built context. So getting a new context for that part of your UI is good. While using a function, you're not really getting any benefit.
Yeah, I also agree. I think that with classes, at the same time, it's way simpler, and you keep the things very focused on a part of the UI and an application that can be reusable. And what you said, Mais, with the context, I totally agree.
Yeah, there is a Stack Overflow question about this topic, which is like very well documented on all the pros and cons.
Yeah,
I see people who start with Flutter, or you can say who are newbies in Flutter, they actually end up creating multiple functions rather than classes.
I see that a lot, like really a lot. And the fact that if I create the function, I can take that function to a file on its own and use it from another widget. So it's not really reusable.
So I do that
Yeah.
a lot. It's true.
Ooh.
You got refactor your apps now. Go and refactor your apps.
Yeah, I'm sure it I can include that. So my next question will be to Miguel. Like Miguel is a freelancer.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like me and my friend have recently started freelancing. So what happens is we try to make Flutter as much as possible. Like our basic is Flutter, but then the client expects a bit more from like what Flutter can give, and we have no question. Like every time we have to say Flutter is not there, Flutter is not supported. So how do you handle this situation? Like if you get the situation?
Yeah. Okay, so when I talk to clients about using Flutter, I'm always very honest with them. And I tell them, look, you are going to win a lot of things by using Flutter because you're going to have, we're going to do this faster than in native and with less people in the team. But you also have a risk here. And you have a risk that maybe there is one feature that you have that is not going to work at 100%, and we're not going to have to do something to fix it. No, so I'm always super open with that, and I make them understand this risk. And once they understand this risk and we agree, the both of us, what will happen if there is something that doesn't work or so then we proceed. No, I don't tell them that everything is going to be perfect because it's still too new. No, we still don't know compared to 10 years of the other frameworks. So I'm always trying to be very honest with my clients beforehand and saying that if there is one feature that we cannot implement in Flutter for some reason, we will need to create that feature in native on the side, and we will need to hire some expert for that platform. If, for example, I know more Android than iOS, so if we need to do it on iOS, we'll need to find an iOS freelancer for that. So I'm honest with that with the client, but I'm also selling it. No, so I'm selling, hey, this is gonna work really well, but we need to keep that in mind always. No. So at least start being honest with them and always offering like an alternative if something doesn't go right.
Same question to Lara and Mais.
I had some, well, the kind of clients we have here in my country are a little bit different. So I tried to work as a freelancer for a short time, but that experience was horrible. So the problem with them is they come and ask me for an application, and they want to include everything in it, and they want it to like I finish it in 1 month, and they want me to do the design. They want me to do everything like Flutter is a literal magic, and then they would complain even if I explain to them what are the things that are not going to work. They say okay, then they come after a while and ask me why this is not working. So it was an awful experience, and I just stopped it. Like I started looking for some real job because freelancing is awful here.
That is the same experience with me too.
Yeah.
Yes, it's freelancing is already very difficult, I will say.
Mhm.
No, you need to be lucky. You need to know who you're working with. But so if you add plus the uncertainty that I don't know, maybe something with Flutter is not going to work, so it makes it even more difficult, no? So, but yeah.
Yeah, actually, it's about the level of technical knowledge that the people have and where you are looking for people. Like people here have a really not a really good technical experience, so they won't understand even if I explain to them. So this is a problem.
Yeah.
Mhm. I personally don't freelance. I'm working for a product company, and they are using native solutions. They've been doing that for 5-6 years already. So I cannot say on that, but I sometimes I'm thinking how I will do things that I'm doing on Android, how I will do them on Flutter. And I think that everything that we have in the app can be done with Flutter, although we have a player for playing audio. which is already very complicated with native, and I don't think this will be possible with Flutter yet.
Yeah, that will be a good example of one feature that you have in native while keeping the rest of the app in Flutter, for example.
Yes.
Which is similar to what the Stadia app is doing, no? The Stadia app is made in Flutter, except the main feature, which is playing games, which runs some Java native code. But the rest of the app is Flutter. So
yeah, and there are many things that with Flutter I will do very fast. And yeah, I wish I could do it with Flutter, but I am stick with Android and I have to wait for builds and such.
Yeah.
No hot reload.
So that's it from my side.
Okay, so yeah, so we have one more. I think the last questions from our side, and that is, what are the some aha moments you have undergone while writing Flutter?
I can start with that one because the first aha moment and the first like wow moment for me was the hot reload, because working with native, you are used to all the waiting times for UI. At some point, I sometimes say that I don't like doing UI, but at the same time, I like it. But it's all this time I spend looking at the build running, and for me, when I was working with Flutter the first times, it was like a aha moment, wow moment, like, what is this? Like, this is awesome. This is amazing. And yeah, I found myself coding a lot and changing things and running things so fast that I could not stop. I didn't have breaks. So for me, that was the first thing that actually got me into Flutter.
Yes. For me, it was animations. When I had to do my first complex animation, that was provided by a designer and explaining how to do it. And I went and I did it. I said, like, wow, this is so much better to any other way of doing animations. I had so much control over it. I really enjoyed creating animations. So I'm asking the designers to give me animations, please, because I enjoy it. And I think it's a bit complex, but it's a really good API, I think.
I want to one day do that and tell my designers to add animations. I'm now on Android, I'm like, no, don't don't do that.
Yeah, I know.
No.
I know.
Yeah.
So for me, first, as Lara said, it was the hot reload. Before Flutter, I was a designer, so I didn't know. I always knew that with Android development, I had to recompile and wait, and I had my computer on that had a really low CPU, and it was awful. I didn't even try it. Then in my last year in college, when I knew about Flutter, I had to do my final project, which was a mobile application. And then I knew about Flutter. That was the really amazing thing when I saw hot reload, and I can actually change a lot in my UI in a matter of seconds. That was amazing. That what got me into Flutter, actually. And I finished my application in 1 month, my senior year application, using Flutter with no prior knowledge. So that was,
nice.
As Lara said, coding with non-stops, with no breaks. The second thing was the navigation. I always wrote navigator like material, page, route, etc. And when I knew about route setting, that was a moment of wow. On generate route, that function. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry, dude. I didn't get it. Can you repeat it?
Okay. So the question is, what are some aha moments or wow moments while working with Flutter?
Okay. So for me, like, it is a pretty recent two moments. One was when I was trying Flutter Web for the first time. Like, I do remember it was in the Flutter India community. So like the community was going on, and I just, like, one of the organizers called me and told me, like, you are in a community and you have to make a Flutter website. So that was pretty amazing because I didn't try it before, and I just started making a website. I thought, let's try to write the code. So what I thought initially was it would be a complete different code. We have to learn something, tens of things and do. But what I did was I just wrote a code basic for Android and iOS because I was planning to make a mobile application. So I just wrote a simple code and thought of running it directly on web. And it showed the proper website. So that was one of the aha moments for me. And recently I started learning the UI designing. So there I learned a pretty good quick, like the designing part, the motions, the animation that it shows. But since I am a developer, I am like a learning developer. So I don't know a lot. I just make a basic code. But recently I started animation. So that was pretty good, pretty awesome for me. I will say that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. So for me, when I started with Flutter, so I was an Android developer, so I really never knew what was the iOS and all those things. And I saw my colleagues to actually coding in Objective C and a lots of code that I don't understand even. So when I started with Flutter and I saw I have to write that code for only once, and I'm getting the Android and iOS applications both at a time. So that was the kind of aha moments for me because I was actually making a product for myself. So it really helped me and saved a lot of my time. As well as UI building as compared to Android native, Flutter is a lot easy and lot crisp, I can say. Uh, okay, so we have one more question from our users. It's please tell me how an experienced Ionic developer can learn Flutter in less time.
So Ionic uses JavaScript, right? I think.
Right.
So there is and in the documentation, in the Flutter documentation, there is a page that says something that Flutter for web developers. And I would recommend reading that one because I think for anyone who comes from web or from JavaScript, it teaches you the basics that you need to understand when you come from with this background. So if you have experience in Ionic, it's probably the best match, I will say, if you want to read like a guide to guide you.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest the same because there's also understanding in the documentation, understanding Flutter for an iOS developer, Android developer, web developer. So depending on your background, they will explain the things in different ways. So I will just go there. Yeah.
There's also there's also fireship.io. Beside the documentation, he has some videos about Flutter for JavaScript developers. So they are really great. You could see them. Fireship.io. Search. He has a lot of videos, but you will find that one.
Nice.
Yeah.
So like I would like to say like
Yes.
Yeah. So I cannot say from Ionic developer because like I don't have a pretty good experience in that. I was basically learning a bit of Android and then directly jumped to Flutter. But as for a normal person like who hasn't learned any of the development field, Flutter is pretty easy. I would suggest course. There are two things that I have recently tried that. One was a Udemy course for Andrea Bizotto, I think so. Yeah, Andrea Bizotto. His learning technique is pretty good. And second will be the sketchnoting because I recently tried the sketchnoting part and it was pretty good. Like the concepts have been given in a single sketch and you get to learn a lot from a basic thing. So that is the best thing I would suggest to learn something new.
There are many kind of resources like documentation if you like to read things or videos. You can also find code labs from Google to have like hands-on experience with things. So depending on how you like to learn, you can also find different kind of resources.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. I'll add one more point into it. When I started with Flutter, so I said I was an Android developer. So what I tried to compare the things which I knew to the Flutter. For example, there's drawers and bottom navigation bar. So that helped me to actually understand things in much faster way. So for JavaScript developers, they can also try these things because the Dart is really very close to this JavaScript thing, and the widget building what we do in Flutter is very similar to what they do in HTML, basically wrapping one widget on the another, and the the properties of parent will be given to the child. So all these things, try to compare them, and I think that will help a lot in the learning phases.
Sure.
So I guess that's all from Flutter Mumbai. Do you guys have something to share? Something to share with the audience or anything you want to share?
Well, we have a podcast which is called Code Cafeteria, and we will love if more people listen to it. So you can find it on Twitter. If you find us on Twitter, you will see on our biography, the descriptions, there is a link to our podcast. And we talk about a little bit everything about tech. So have a listen. Maybe you like it and you will subscribe.
Yeah, and also Miguel and me like to sketch note in conferences and talks and make little notes of the talk. So we have always like the summary for ourselves, and we try to always publish them in the website we are running together called sketchnoting.dev.
Yeah,
You can find
the sketches
many different kind of resources from Flutter. It can be Android, can be core skills, different things that we've different talks that we've been watching over the years.
Yeah, for me, I'll just share one advice, like one honest advice from someone who suffered at the beginning. So please, before you try to search for a solution from other developers or on GitHub or on Stack Overflow, anyway, you have to go first and read on api.flutter.dev. You have to read the documentation for what you are using, because when I started, I didn't do that for a whole year, and I was stuck for a lot of things. But the past months, I started to read the docs, and the learning curve was pretty much different. So this is an advice to read the docs.
Good one.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't get the question. Hello? Can you repeat the question?
Do you have any sort of advice for audience?
Okay, so I would just have one advice, that just keep the fear off. Like I have been scared of Flutter since like last 1 year. I have been trying that, and recently I thought like let's just forget everything and try whatever there is new. So I would say that would be a suggestion. Like try something new in Flutter, and you will surely learn it. I don't think it is pretty difficult or it is tough to learn or it is tough to try. So that would be my suggestion. Everybody.
Okay, what I'll suggest to newbies or someone who is starting off is, don't run behind the block and other state management. Use state, and that is the best way to manage state. At least for beginners. I mean, for 2 to 3 months, you don't need the block or the provider things, anything. So yeah, I think that's it, and we can wrap our now.
Meetup.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Bye, Mais. Bye, Lara. Miguel.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for
everyone.
inviting us.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting
Thank you
us.
for coming here and sharing things with people for Mumbai, or I can say India, or everyone.
Actually, the whole world. Like the whole world is Flutter Mumbai right now.
Yeah.
You can say that.
So yeah, and also you audience, you can find all the information related to speakers and what they shared in the video description. So go find out. You will find all the links. Okay. So I think that's it. Let's wrap it here. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
There's a dash behind.
Yeah.
Okay. ¿Salgo del estudio?